In the quiet, picturesque town of Maple Grove, the gruesome murder of Emily Davis sent shockwaves through the community. What appeared to be a peaceful, close-knit suburban enclave was shattered by a crime of passion and betrayal that revealed the dark underbelly of seemingly idyllic lives. The lives of two couples, Thomas and Sarah Mitchell and Jason and Emily Davis, intertwined in ways that would lead to obsession, deceit, and ultimately murder. Thomas Mitchell was a respected architect, known for his charming demeanor and seemingly perfect marriage to Sarah, a dedicated schoolteacher. Jason Davis, a successful financial advisor, and his wife Emily were the Mitchells' closest friends. The two couples shared more than just neighborhood barbecues and weekend getaways. They also engaged in a consensual wife-swapping arrangement that initially brought excitement and novelty to their lives. However, beneath the surface of this unconventional lifestyle, dangerous emotions were brewing. Thomas's fascination with Emily grew into an all-consuming obsession, one that Sarah, his wife, was painfully aware of. Emily, sensing the intensity of Thomas's feelings, decided to put an end to the arrangement, not realizing the deadly consequences her decision would provoke. Thomas and Sarah Mitchell had been married for 10 years, and from the outside, their marriage appeared to be a model of stability and happiness. Thomas was a successful architect known for his innovative designs and charismatic personality. Sarah, a third-grade teacher, was beloved by her students and respected by her colleagues. They lived in a charming house on Maple Street, surrounded by a well-tended garden that Sarah took great pride in. Jason and Emily Davis moved to Maple Grove 5 years ago and quickly became friends with the Mitchells. Jason, a financial advisor, was outgoing and affable, always the life of the party. Emily, with her striking beauty and magnetic personality, was equally popular. The Davises' arrival brought a new dynamic to the neighborhood, and their friendship with the Mitchells blossomed over shared interests and mutual respect. The idea of wife-swapping was first brought up during a dinner party at the Mitchells' home, fueled by wine and a sense of adventure. The conversation turned to the topic of open relationships. To everyone's surprise, the concept was met with curiosity rather than shock. Over the next few weeks, the idea was discussed more seriously, with all parties agreeing to boundaries and rules to ensure their primary relationships remained intact. The first encounter was awkward but exciting. Thomas and Emily and Jason and Sarah exchanged partners for the night. It was a thrilling yet nerve-wracking experience, but one that left them eager for more. What started as a once-in-a-while experiment soon became a regular part of their lives, adding a spark to both marriages. Initially, the arrangement seemed to work well. Both couples appeared happier and more connected. They maintained their social activities, often hosting joint parties and going on vacations together. Their secret was carefully guarded, discussed only within the confines of their homes or during private gatherings. The novelty of the arrangement brought a sense of exhilaration, and for a while, it seemed like they had found the perfect balance. However, as the months passed, subtle changes began to surface, particularly in Thomas's behavior. He started to show an unusual amount of interest in Emily. Often finding reasons to spend time alone with her, Sarah noticed his increasing preoccupation, but chose to ignore it, hoping it was just a phase. Jason, too, seemed oblivious to the growing tension. Unbeknownst to the others, Thomas's fascination with Emily was turning into something deeper and more troubling. He found himself thinking about her constantly, replaying their encounters in his mind and craving more time with her. What had started as a harmless adventure was slowly morphing into an obsession that would have devastating consequences for all involved. Thomas's fascination with Emily was no longer just a thrill. It had evolved into an all-consuming obsession. He thought about her incessantly, his mind wandering to their encounters during work meetings and family dinners. His architectural projects, once his passion, now seemed secondary to his desire for Emily. He started to find ways to be near her, volunteering to help with tasks Jason usually handled, or inviting the Davises over more frequently. Sarah began to notice the change in her husband. At first, she attributed it to the excitement of their new lifestyle, but soon it became clear that Thomas's interest in Emily went beyond their agreement. He became irritable and distant when they weren't with the Davises. and his conversations often veered towards Emily's likes and dislikes, works, and habits. One evening, while cleaning up after a dinner party, Sarah confronted Thomas. His reaction was defensive, dismissing her concerns as jealousy. Sarah, not wanting to disrupt the delicate balance they had established, let it go, but kept a closer eye on him. Her suspicions grew when she found him staring at Emily during gatherings, his gaze lingering longer than necessary. Emily, too, began to sense Thomas's growing obsession. Initially flattered by his attention, she soon found it uncomfortable. His touches became more possessive, his words more intimate than appropriate. She discussed her discomfort with Jason, who brushed it off, believing Thomas was just more expressive in his affections. Jason's nonchalance left Emily feeling isolated in her concerns. The turning point came during a weekend trip to a lakeside cabin. The couples had planned the getaway to reconnect and enjoy some time away from their routine. However, the trip only served to highlight Thomas's fixation. He monopolized Emily's time, insisting on taking her out on the lake alone, leaving Jason and Sarah behind. The tension was palpable, and Emily's attempts to distance herself were met with subtle resistance from Thomas. One night, while sitting by the fire, Thomas made a comment that crossed the line. He spoke about leaving everything behind and starting fresh, just the two of them. Emily, shocked and unsettled, excused herself and went to bed early. Sarah, who had overheard the conversation, confronted Thomas again. This time he was less dismissive, but still refused to acknowledge the depth of his feeling. Sarah's frustration grew as she realized the extent of Thomas's obsession. She loved her husband but was increasingly aware that his infatuation with Emily could destroy their marriage and their friendship with the Davises. Despite her efforts to intervene, Thomas's behavior only became more erratic. He started to follow Emily outside of their arranged meetings, showing up at her yoga classes, and even appearing at her workplace under the guise of casual visits. Emily's unease turned to fear. She confided in a close friend who advised her to distance herself from Thomas as much as possible. Determined to take control, Emily decided to end the arrangement altogether. She hoped that by doing so, Thomas would return to his senses, and they could all move on from this chapter without causing further harm. One evening, while Jason was away on a business trip, Thomas showed up at the Davises' house unannounced. Emily was taken aback but let him in, hoping to avoid a scene. They sat in the living room, the air thick with unspoken tension. Thomas confessed his feelings for her, speaking of a future where they could be together openly. Emily, horrified, tried to reason with him, explaining that their arrangement was never meant to be more than a temporary excitement. Emily's fear turned to anger. She realized she needed to put an end to this before it destroyed her marriage and her friendship with Sarah. She told Thomas firmly that their arrangement was over and that he needed to respect her boundaries and her marriage. Thomas, visibly shaken, tried to persuade her to reconsider. Emily stood her ground. Over the next few days, Emily avoided Thomas, hoping he would come to his senses. She confided in Sarah, who listened with a heavy heart. Sarah knew her husband's obsession had gone too far, and while she wanted to support Emily, she also felt a twisted loyalty to Thomas. She promised Emily she would talk to him, hoping to defuse the situation. However, Thomas's obsession only deepened. He started showing up at Emily's work, waiting for her after hours, and leaving her messages expressing his undying love. Emily, feeling increasingly unsafe, decided to confront him one last time, hoping to make him understand the gravity of his action. They met at a secluded park, away from prying eyes. Emily reiterated that their arrangement was over and that his behavior was unacceptable. She pleaded with him to let go and move on. Thomas, unable to accept her rejection, grew desperate. He accused her of leading him on and playing with his emotions. Emily, maintaining her composure, insisted that they part ways and return to their respective marriages. Unbeknownst to them, Sarah had followed Thomas to the park. She watched from a distance, her heart pounding as she saw the confrontation unfold. She could see the anguish on Thomas's face and the determination on Emily's. Sarah knew that this confrontation was inevitable, but she also feared what might happen next. As the argument escalated, Thomas's desperation turned to anger. Emily's refusal to entertain his fantasies felt like a personal betrayal, He lashed out verbally, calling her names and accusing her of ruining his life. Emily, holding back tears, stood her ground, refusing to be intimidated. Sarah, watching from the shadows, felt a surge of panic. She knew she had to intervene before things got out of hand. She stepped out of her hiding place and approached the two, her voice shaking as she called out to Thomas. The sight of Sarah seemed to snap Thomas out of his rage, and he turned to her, his expression a mix of confusion and relief. Emily, taking advantage of the distraction, walked away, determined to put as much distance between herself and Thomas as possible. Sarah, now alone with her husband, tried to calm him down. She reassured him that they would find a way to move past this. But inside, she knew that the damage had already been done. The following days were tense and fraught with anxiety. Emily, feeling vulnerable, took additional precautions to ensure her safety. She avoided places where Thomas might be and changed her daily routines. Thomas, meanwhile, became increasingly erratic. His behavior at work and home was unpredictable, and he started to withdraw from his usual social circle. The once charming and successful architect was now a shadow of his former self, consumed by his fixation on Emily. Sarah tried to maintain a facade of normalcy, but the strain was taking its toll. She felt torn between her loyalty to her husband and her desire to protect her friend. The guilt of not intervening sooner weighed heavily on her. She reached out to Emily, offering her support and promising to help her through this difficult time. Emily appreciated the gesture, but remained wary, unsure of how to navigate the delicate situation. One evening, Emily received a call from Sarah, who was in tears. Sarah revealed that Thomas had been behaving erratically and had threatened to harm himself. She confessed that she was scared for both Thomas and Emily's safety. Emily, although deeply concerned, felt that she had done everything she could to distance herself from the situation. She advised Sarah to seek professional help for Thomas and to consider involving the authorities if necessary. Thomas's behavior continued to spiral out of control. He began sending Emily increasingly disturbing messages, some of which hinted at violence. Fearing for her safety, Emily decided to take action. She filed a restraining order against Thomas and reported his threats to the police. The authorities took her concerns seriously and began monitoring Thomas's activities. Despite the intervention, Thomas's obsession didn't wane. He managed to evade the police surveillance and continued to pursue Emily. One night, Emily received an alarming phone call from the police. They informed her that Thomas had been found in a secluded area near her home, carrying a weapon. The authorities had apprehended him before he could reach her, but the incident left Emily shaken and frightened. Thomas was arrested and charged with several offenses, including harassment and possession of a weapon. His trial became a media sensation, drawing attention from across the country. The once respected architect was now a criminal, his obsession with Emily leading to his downfall. The court hearings revealed the extent of his fixation, painting a picture of a man consumed by unrequited love and unable to let go. Emily's testimony was both heart-wrenching and courageous. She described the fear and anxiety she had experienced and how Thomas's actions had impacted her life. Her bravery in speaking out not only helped secure Thomas's conviction, but also served as a reminder of the dangers of obsession and the importance of seeking help in times of crisis. Thomas was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, his once promising career and personal life reduced to ruins. Sarah, while still grappling with the aftermath of the ordeal, decided to focus on rebuilding her own life and supporting Emily as she moved forward. The friendship between the two women grew stronger, forged in the crucible of their shared experience. In the aftermath of the trial, Maple Grove slowly began to heal. The community, though forever changed by the events, rallied around Emily and Sarah, offering support and solidarity. The story of the Mitchells and the Davises became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the complexities of human emotions and the devastating consequences of unchecked obsession. Emily and Sarah continued their lives, marked by the scars of their experiences, but determined to move forward with resilience and hope. The tragedy that had unfolded in their once peaceful town served as a stark reminder of the fragility of happiness and the importance of confronting dark truths before they spiral out of control.